Hello, fellow comrades. We're gathered here today to remember our somewhat beloved Imperial Russia, to eulogize our old state that shall fall spectacularly in the name of communism and the Great Revolution. I've asked a few of Russia's humble civilians to speak, but first, I'd like to say a few words. Imperial Russia. It was something, I'll give it that, but in terms of greatness, it was about as great as private property. I guess I really got to give it to them for the square mileage. The Tsars did manage to help create the Trans-Siberian Railroad, but they literally just stole the idea from the Americans, just like they stole the people's livelihoods to go party with Western imperialist snobs. Also, they exiled me. Okay. We must remember, though, that without the existence of terrible leadership, we could never bring about the glorious revolution. Now, my friends, I'm here to tell you the reckoning days are on the horizon, and the end to suffering is near. Now, my friends, is the time to rise up against our imperialist oppressors in the name of humanity's final evolutionary step, in the name of equality and egalitarianism for all, in the name of the communist revolution. Sorry, comrades, I get a bit passionate sometimes. Now for our first speaker, I've asked a Russian factory worker to talk about their experience in Imperial Russia.
Hey, what am I supposed to do?
Why don't we go back to the beginning? Tell me about the reforms of Alexander II.
People always say how great Alexander II reforms are, but I mean, after he abolished serfdom, my family was forced to pay off installment debt for 49 years. But hey, he did allow us to marry whoever we wanted, and we weren't sold anymore, which is pretty dang cool. Well, the debt is so big that our lives have barely changed economically, which is not so cool. It's like, hey, thanks for our freedom, but we're still living paycheck to paycheck here. But Russia, gosh, as much as my life has pretty much sucked, I can't help but feel weirdly patriotic for it. I mean, I remember when we were fighting with the Japanese, and I was sure we would win, but we didn't. I just moved from a farm to a factory in Moscow, and I was doing the same old work I did every day, and I still got paid little to nothing for it. But then I heard a bunch of people yelling, and I went to this little 9-year-old kid, and he said, "We lost," and I was really confused, because how could we lose? I was so disappointed, but for a real second, everyone in Russia felt united.
Right then, moving on, let's talk about the revolution of 1905.
Well, when the Bloody Sunday Massacre happened, I remember being furious. Like, the Tsar had just murdered a bunch of peaceful protesters? Like, how dare he? It is so obvious how outdated the government is. Like, how could we not go on strike? I mean, come on. Life here is just horrible.
Well, thank you so much, President. As you can see, Russia's attempt at reform clearly isn't working for everyone. As long as economic freedom is kept from the people, we'll never experience the liberty of a true socialist society. Now, it's time to hear from a former Russian aristocrat.
Bonjour. That's French for hello. If you didn't know, my family just thought it was so important to send me to the West to learn like all the great Western thinkers. Anywho, I've lived in Russia all my life, and I've known the Tsar family since before I could walk. And let me tell you, I've got some real dirt on those people. Those bastards didn't even invite me to their Christmas party in 1904. An outrage.
You might recall we were fighting war with the Japanese back then.
Oh, well, we weren't the ones fighting in that, silly. I think it all went downhill back when Alexander II gave those dirty little serfs personal autonomy. And don't get me started on letting Poland have regional government control. An abomination. I can't believe we're letting one man decide the fate of our country. Man, the current guy is really blowing it too. Nicholas is just a real nincompoop. He's made a horrible decision. I mean, everyone knows the State Duma is a fake. No one was actually going to concede power to the liberals. Also, you didn't hear this from me, but he's got a random dude pretending to be a wizard living in his house. No joke. Apparently, some crazy drunk magic peasant guy healed his son, and now he's basically running the country. And he's planning his parties. Like, seriously, everyone knows I'm the life of the party. Not Rasputin. His spring fling would have been 100 times better if they'd gotten those French ballerinas like I said, but no, Rasputin wanted the French cabaret. Apparently it was cheaper too, but I mean, like, it's embarrassing. The guy's lost his touch. Who lets starving peasants get in the way of a good time? I mean, joining World War I when Germany was industrialized was not the greatest decision too. But I'll be honest with you, Russia is trying. Factories are being built, censorship are decreasing. If I'd said all this like a couple years ago, I'd already have been dead, no joke. So, the country is trying, but God knows how long this is gonna go on for.
Great, thanks. Very enlightening on the inner workings of the Russian court. For our last speaker, we have a general who fought in both the Russo-Japanese War and in World War I.
I love nothing more than I love Russia. Not even my wife and kids. That's how much I love Russia.
Why don't you tell me about conditions during the war?
Which war? There's so many
Again,
wars.
that does not make you look as good as you think it does. Let's just start with military technology.
Well, you see, the Tsars refused to industrialize like the West had been doing since over a century ago. We're behind on our factories. We just can't keep up. Not to mention all the workers are such babies. So I'm starving. Our children are dying. Our lives are miserable. But they don't realize how dumb we look. Picture this. I'm out there with my troops, front lines of World War I. And then all of a sudden, the Germans show up with their little Maxim guns, and all we have are our handy-dandy rifles. We're toast. We're absolute toast. It's unbelievable. Russia is trying her damnedest. Bless her soul. It's just not enough. Not enough.
Yeah, definitely just another one in Russia's great line of achievements. Now, care to elaborate on the 1905 revolution?
Man, don't even get me started. Tsar Nicholas II takes one look at a bunch of rioting workers and decides it's a great idea to fire on a bunch of peaceful protesters. Has this guy learned nothing in all his years of ruling? Our workers have been striking ever since, and the State Duma is only going to fool the liberals into thinking they have power for so long, which means more angry citizens. And with more angry citizens, more strikes. I do feel bad for Nicholas, though. He's really backed himself into a corner, and I'm sure the future will not work in his favor. Imagine it. 400 years of Russian Tsar rule, all to go down in one hell of a rebellion.
Well, thank you, General, because this brings me perfectly to my next segment. Ladies and gentlemen, the year is 1914, and the future is upon us. 9 years since the strikes of 1905, and 9 years since the creation of Nicholas's phony State Duma and the representatives in it. Our workers are still starving, I'm still in exile, and change is inevitable. The tyrannical government that has hindered us thus far is breathing its last. Russia's stability is faltering. This year, my friends, this is the year we rise up to face. What?
The revolution happens in 1917.
Are you kidding me? Well, in 3 years, ladies and gentlemen, we'll rise up to face the failures of the Russian state and fight for the change that will give Russia back to the people. Bring forth the means of production. Bring forth the land and the education and the bread and bestow it to the people. Join the great Bolshevik Party in our quest to establish a noble socialist regime in Russia. Join us to grant this land stability for the rest of time in a new classless society, a utopia of true liberty of the people. Thank you. And remember, peace, land, and bread.